Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Usually on this channel we talk about how to make your bikes faster, how to improve them, how to upgrade them. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different because I was inspired by a bike that I was working on, and it's a bit of a counter example on how you should probably not do it if you want the most bang for your buck, or it's not necessarily the order I would take when I'm grading a time trial bike. So let's just go straight through the bike and let's talk about some options and how I would do it differently. So let's get cracking. Okay, so here we have a Cervelo P series time trial slash triathlon bike. It's not really a dedicated frame set to any of the disciplines, and it's arguably more of an entry-level option when it comes to bikes like this. This is basically a stock setup, or at least it was until yesterday, and it was equipped with Ultegra R8000 mechanical 2x11 shifting, which has now been upgraded to a complete, well, almost complete Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 R8150 12-speed electronic group set. And this is where my concerns come in. You see, I don't have any problem with electronic shifting. In fact, I'm a big fan of it, particularly on time trial bikes. They are incredibly useful because it allows you to quickly modify your position without redoing your whole shifting system, and it also gives the option of shifting from the base bar, which is impossible to do with mechanical shifting. It also is more convenient when fitting into the UCI rules because the buttons are, well, just buttons. They don't move like Shimano's mechanical friction shifters, so they're quite a bit of a limitation when it comes to fitting into the restrictions. So in that regard, it's a much better option. In fact, most higher-end modern time trial bikes and triathlon bikes don't even support mechanical shifting anymore, and that's for good reason. But the reason I'm making this video is to point out a couple of things. So a week ago or so, a bit more in fact, I've done a video about budget performance upgrades to your bikes. And I was talking about that because I see that as the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to making your bike and overall setup faster. And this upgrade goes completely against that. Because if you look at it from a performance and pure speed oriented perspective, apart from the things that I've talked about the benefits of electronic shifting on a time trial bike, it doesn't really make this bike any faster. So the only reason actually it's more efficient now is because I've put on a wax chain together with the new group set, but you can do that with 11-speed mechanical just as well, and it will be the same performance upgrade. So this bike is now essentially 0 watts faster, or maybe actually 2 or 3 watts, because despite the lack of integration and setup, I think it still is quite a bit cleaner now than with the mechanical shift housing going all the way around here. So maybe that, but I'm not sure that it makes more than 2-3 watts of a difference. Whereas on the other hand, we still have entry-level wheels. We still have Vittoria Rubino tires, which are just slow training tires, particularly with butyl inner tubes in them, which are, well, almost certainly are butyl. Yeah, standard drivetrain, no friction optimization there, no position optimization. As I said, it makes no reasonable amount of difference when you compare it to the cost of this upgrade. So let's have a look at what could have been done instead. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about possible options where you can spend this or a similar amount of money to gain a lot more when it comes to speed. So if you want a comparison, then this upgrade cost an exact of 1,818 euros, invoice from my shop, including labor and everything else regarding the parts. for arguably no more than 2 or 3 watts saved if we discount the chain, because that wasn't really part of the upgrade. That was just an extra from my side. And speaking of extras, and probably the lowest hanging fruit of all of these upgrades, is to simply just have your bike adjusted properly. So what do I mean by that? On this bike both brakes were rubbing, and it's not really because there was any problem with them, it's just because they were not properly adjusted and no one has looked at it properly before. And I have data from Aero Coach which we have tested back in 2020 when I was out at Derby Velodrome, and it came out to 4 watts at 45 km per hour for a slight ting in your brake, like when the brake is just touching the rotor on one point in the revolution. These were rubbing a lot more, and both of them, so that's easily 10 to 12 watts at 45 km per hour. And well, if you adjusted this yourself, then it doesn't cost anything, so that's €0 for 10 watts, let's say. And if you brought it back here, then it's just labor costs, so that's anywhere between 15 to 30 euros depending on where you take it. So that was the first thing I would like to put on the list, just having a bike properly adjusted. And there's one more thing connected to this. Well, the main reason the owner wanted to do this upgrade is because she was getting chain drops on mechanical. And well, the thing is that, again, this is just a setup issue, because there's nothing wrong with the Ultegra R8000. It simply drops the chain if it's not properly adjusted. Of course, with electronic it's less common because the front mag shifts in a different manner. But yeah, it's something that can be solved for a lot less money. Then another point I would like to make is, and another very low hanging fruit, is just having a clean bike. Why is this important? Well, the surfaces on your frame, wheels, etc. are designed to work, aerodynamically speaking, when there's nothing attached to them, like dust, dirt, bugs, etc. And if these things keep piling on there, particularly at critical areas like the fork, the inner sides of the fork, the rear triangle, the inner sides of that, then it disrupts the airflow going around there, and it just makes your bike less aerodynamic. This is not a huge difference, obviously, can be around, let's say, 2 to 3 watts. But again, if you wash the bike yourself, it doesn't really cost more than €5, I would assume, if you spread out the purchases of, well, water and cleaning supplies. And if you have it done professionally, then it's, I would say, around €30 maximum. And yeah, that's another 2 to 3 watts saved for not a whole lot of money. Then thirdly on my list, it will be the Vox chain, like we have discussed in the earlier video. Now, I'm not going to go into detail in there, but here I would assume at the normal power output you could save at least 5 to 7 watts for, well, if you talk about the baseline price, if you Vox your existing chain alone at home, then I would assume it would cost around 15 euros or so, plus some hours of having the chain cleaned in the first place, together with the rest of the drivetrain, depending on the state of what it is in already. If you purchase, let's say, a fully prepared chain, a higher end one from us, that's around 80 euros, depending on the model, and a complete drivetrain clean, depending again on the state of your drivetrain. If it's very dirty, it can take up to 2 or 3 hours, which is around 50-60 hours or more in labor, again depending on what the condition is. But that's a huge chunk of power saved for, again, not a whole lot of money. Then further down the list would be the tires, of course. Now, as I said, these are very cheap plastic Vittoria Rubinos, not something you want to time trial in. And depending again on what you choose. For example, the Veloflex Records, these are very fast tires, in fact the fastest tire depending on the measurement, and they're not very expensive at all at 42 euros a piece. Plus, if you factor in a pair of high quality latex inner tubes from Challenge, for example, then really this is an upgrade for simply not much more than 100 euros, and you can save. Well, I compared data from this chart from Aero Coach, where the worst performing tire or pair of tires costs 48 watts in rolling resistance to run at 45 km per hour, whereas the best performing tire is around 20. So that's a huge difference. It's 28 watts right there. And I would assume that a pair of training tires like this would be an even bigger difference. I would say another 10 watts at least. So if we take it that way, it's 30 or so watts saved for around 100 euros. So this is probably the best bang for your buck and the biggest difference when it comes to performance. Then if you go down to the equipment level, where you have more serious investments, but still you get a huge amount of drag saved. So my pick for the next one would be a proper skin suit like this one from No Pins, a high-end skin suit I mean. This is what I'm using. It's the No Pins Flow. There's an actually even faster one, the Flow Sub-Zero, which I'll be getting soon. And over a standard kit, this could save, depending on your body type and shape, obviously the bigger you are, the bigger the savings, around 20 to 30 watts, I would say, at 45 km per hour. So that's a huge difference. A skin suit like this costs around 400 euros, so still much less than the upgrade we've done here, and for a big amount of performance gain. And you can of course supplement that with No Pins Flow overshoes, which look like this, go over your shoe, as the name suggests, and your calves. Much more aerodynamic than a bare leg, and legs are very important when it comes to aerodynamics. So that's another, they say, around 8 to 10 watts saved for around 70 to 80 euros, depending on your shipping costs from the UK. Then if we have the clothing side dialed, what we can do next is some aero testing. Now, I do have some experience with this because I do aero testing with my clients using the Noteo sensor, which enables us to do real-world testing on a quiet piece of road or a velodrome. And again, for a conservative estimate for good athletes that don't have a very optimized position, we're starting at 20 watts saved usually, just with different helmet changes and positions. And this costs from around 300 euros, that's the base 2-hour rate, compared to, well, how long do you want to test. But still, this is much cheaper and much more effective than that. When you have the results done, you know which helmet fits or which piece of equipment fits you well, but helmets really are the most crucial when we talk about time trialing. And the time trial helmet costs between 200 and 300 euros, the higher end ones, the modern ones. And again, these will give you the amount that we test out, well, basically. So that's another 500–600 euros for another, let's say, 20 watts saved. So again, it's a bigger investment, but the return is huge when it comes to speed. And I've got two final picks regarding the bike itself. The first thing, well, usually when we talk about the budget of around 2,000 euros which people want to spend on the bike, the first thing would be wheels. And if you go through the list that I've just mentioned, they are only coming into consideration now after all these things are done. Yes, these are training wheels, not very aerodynamic, but you need to consider how much the rider, the power output and the rolling resistance takes up of the whole package of the complete resistance equation, and only then you can start to look at the wheels, which are important but not quite up there with the things I've mentioned. But if we were to go for wheels, nowadays there's a pretty cool option called Easy Disc, which is a self-installed disc wheel cover. Now, granted, it will never perform as well as a full-on dedicated disc wheel, like for example my head Vanquish RC8 disc, RCD disc, but it gets you close enough, and with the cost of around 200 euros it can convert your aluminium basic road wheel to a quasi disc wheel, and it's just more aerodynamic. I don't have exact data on how much this is for an improvement, but I would assume around 3 to 4 watts for 200 euros. That's still a good cost to performance ratio if we consider the other parts on the list. And then finally, what I would consider is getting a proper deep section front wheel, because arguably the front wheel is doing the biggest amount of difference. This would be around 5 to 6 watts. Again, you might be surprised that these numbers are a fair bit lower than the other things I've mentioned on the list, but that's just how it is if you compare the total drag. So yeah, to fill out the rest of the budget, you could buy something like the Mavic Cosmic SL65. That's the one pick that I had. Pretty fast wheel, pretty cheap. MV Foundation 65, something in that region, which are fast, not very light, but well-performing wheels. And yeah, if we add up all these things, it comes up with the worst estimates for my price. It came out to 2,165 euros, but really that's, well, I would say at least 60 watts saved at 45 km per hour, which is a huge margin, and it sounds like something impossible, but you need to consider that me as a 60 to 3 kilo rider putting out usually not more than 320, 330 watts, I can do the same speed as riders putting out 400 watts plus with their setups not very optimized, and obviously them being larger in size. But yeah, these things just work, and well, if you need proof, it's up there, you know. So this is my take on this topic. I hope you have found this informational and useful. Again, I'm not saying that an electronic group set is a bad upgrade. Not at all. I'm just saying that if what you're after is pure speed, then, well, there's a list I actually made. It would be only after these, when you've already done, well, this bit. Granted, it does make the testing process a lot easier and a lot more convenient when testing out different stack heights depending on the bike, different extensions, etc. But yeah, ultimately when it comes down to price versus performance, these things are what you should look at. If you're still not sure on what to go for, then you're welcome to use my consultation service, which I'll link down below, together with all the products that I've mentioned in this video, also the group set. So yeah, I think that concludes this for today. Thanks you for watching. Subscribe if you want more tips on how to go faster on your bike, and have a nice day. Bye.